Hi friends, welcome back to Brilliant Blue Reviews. My name is Heather, and in this video I'm going to be giving you my review of the movie Roofman. Okay, Roofman is kind of a dramedy. It's mostly a drama, despite the fact that the woman who was sitting next to me in the movie, who was obviously quite intoxicated, seemed to think that this was a comedy and laughed very loudly and obnoxiously through the entire movie, which was very disruptive. She also talked in sort of a narrative fashion, like describing everything in the movie to the guy she was with as if he didn't have eyes and couldn't see it for himself. And she swore repeatedly, loudly throughout the movie, and there was literally one empty seat between me and her. I've never wanted someone to shut up so bad. That was an unfortunate part of my movie-going experience tonight, that I had this woman next to me. I did my best to ignore her, but she was very annoying. Please don't be like that when you go to the movies. Aside from that, I did like this movie a lot, and I'm going to tell you right away, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. Roofman stars Channing Tatum as this guy, Jeffrey, what was his actual name? I can't remember the guy's actual name now. It's a true story. And like, this was probably like the most true version of a true story. It didn't even say it was based on a true story. It said it was a true story. And the thing that really caught me to kind of give, weight to that was at the end during the credits, like while the credits were running, they showed actual news footage from these actual events. And they had interviews that they've obviously done somewhat recently, like when they were making this film, of the actual people that are depicted in the story. So the real people. And then they also showed pictures that were taken like in the movie of Channing Tatum and the other actors and like the family and stuff. And then the actual pictures of the actual people side by side. So that was kind of cool at the end because you got to see who the real people were that were depicted in this story. The basic story is this guy, Jeff, whose last name I can't remember, that's played by Channing Tatum. He was married and had 3 kids, a little girl and twin little boys. And he'd been in the military and had done a good job in the military, but he'd never done very well in school, he said. But then he just didn't have any luck with success with like work or career or anything after he got out of the military. And he and his family were really struggling financially. It starts out at his daughter's 6th birthday. His gift to his daughter on her 6th birthday is one of his own toys from when he was a kid that he wrapped back up and re-gifted to her. And she wanted a bike. He feels really bad, like right away, like he's not providing for his family, and he and his wife are not getting along. She works at McDonald's. It sort of seemed like maybe they were separated for a time. I don't know. It wasn't really clear. But anyway, he came up with this idea of robbing McDonald's, or I guess the more accurate term would be burglarizing the McDonald's, because what he would do is, and it wasn't just McDonald's that explained at the end, it was mostly McDonald's, but he also broke into like Burger King, a Blockbuster Video, things like this. He would hole in through the roof of the businesses, and then he was always very polite and kind to the employees. And like at the McDonald's, the one that they showed, he locked them in the freezer or the cooler. He would steal all the money from the store and get away with it. And he did this, he said in the narration of the movie, how many times does it take to provide your family with like a nice house and how many times do you have to do this? And he said the answer is 45 times. So he apparently burglarized 45 different businesses and got enough money that they had a nice house and nice cars and everything, and they were doing quite well. And then he got caught and he got sent to prison, and he was sentenced to 45 years in prison. And it didn't really say how long he had been in, but he was really having a very difficult time staying in communication with his kids. His wife had moved on and didn't want to have anything to do with him and wasn't letting his daughter talk to him on the phone and stuff like that. And he was very upset by that and was really distressed at being cut off from his daughter. And so he quite cleverly escaped from prison. This was in the early 2000s. I want to say it was like 2004, 2005. that this took place. They didn't even know how he had escaped from prison. They just realized during a normal head count that he was missing. He ends up hiding inside a Toys R Us. And he actually makes a whole little kind of apartment for himself within this display behind where the bikes are in the Toys R Us. And he's got everything set up for himself in there, and he's living in the Toys R Us for quite a while. Now, what he was kind of waiting for, he was just trying to hide and stay out of sight until his friend, a former army buddy, who was now in the business of making documents for people, actual passports, actual IDs, background information, everything, like new identities for people. And he thought he was only going to have to wait about a month for his friend to be able to help him. But his friend took a 6-month contract, his girlfriend said, back in Afghanistan. And so he was gone, and he had to kill 6 months of time. He broke out of prison in June, and his friend wasn't going to be back until December 1st. And so he had to kill all this time and stay out of sight for all that time. And in the process of this, he ends up having a relationship, falling in love and having a relationship with this woman, Lee, who's played by Kirsten Dunst. She's divorced and has 2 daughters. One's 16 and the other one's 11 or 12, I think. The other major actor that you probably would know is Peter Dinklage, plays the manager of the Toys R Us. His name is Mitch, his character's name. And there's other actors in there that you would probably recognize and stuff, but nobody else really big. He starts this relationship with Lee, Kirsten Dunst's character, and has a really positive thing going with her and her daughters, and they're kind of making a family and stuff. I'm not going to give away the ending, but you're basically thinking the whole time, there's no good way this can possibly end well. He's kind of narrating it, and he says, eventually somebody's going to recognize me, because he was arrested and, was on the news and everything. And he said, eventually this is going to catch up to me somehow. And I'm not really going to tell you any more about the plot than that, but it's kind of sad. It's a true story, and this actually happened to these people. And it kind of is kind of sad how it turns out, and sort of heartbreaking, because there's just really no way that this could end well. The time period that this is set in was very important to the story. So the fact that it was set in the early 2000s is really critical, because there's things like Toys R Us still exists, and he meets Lee by going to her church and donating some toys to the toy drive. And it's an evangelical Christian church, but it's a pre-Trump era evangelical Christian church, okay? So the church has a very different feel to it that I'm very familiar with, because I used to go to church, like a church like that. And it's a very positive and uplifting and encouraging place. And it doesn't have all this hateful right-wing rhetoric, around it like a lot of churches these days do. And sorry if that offends anyone, but it's true. So that's a whole element to it too, is that he gets involved in this church, and he's going to church with Lee and her daughters and everything. And it's a very positive part of what's happening in the story. And the people at the church are very welcoming and very kind to him and everything. It's really just kind of a sweet drama, really. It's a pretty simple story at its essence, because it's about this one guy and how he wanted to be able to reconnect with his children, and then he sort of forms this new relationship, and their relationship is kind of sweet, and he's trying to build something with her daughters and everything. And yeah, there's not a lot more to it than that, but it has a lot of emotion. There are some very funny moments too, not as much as the woman sitting next to me might have thought there were, because she was uproariously laughing through the whole thing, and nobody else in the theater was laughing. These were not laugh out loud moments. You need to be prepared for a fairly serious drama, with maybe a couple of lighter moments that are but you're not sitting there cracking up or anything. It is rated R, and the main reason I would say that it's rated R is for language. There is quite a bit of language. Only one incident of very brief violence. There is some nudity. We see Channing Tatum nude from behind when he's living in the Toys R Us. So we do see full rear male nudity, but we don't see the front of him. There's implied sexual activity, but it's not shown graphically or anything like that. There's some decent lessons to be had in this movie, you know, like about the choices that you make in life and what are good choices and not good choices, and how the choices that you make can really affect the rest of your life. So there's some interesting messages there. But I think it's definitely worth seeing. Like I said, I would give it 4 out of 5 stars. So Roofman, starring Channing Tatum and Kirsten Dunst. It's in theaters now. Thanks for taking the time to watch this movie review. If you liked it or found it interesting at all, be sure to give me a thumbs up down below. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of my other upcoming movie reviews. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.